Dear listeners, a new day and a new story to discuss. Today, I'm going to tell you a story that interests me. Listen and write down what you think about this situation. I'm interested in your opinions. Hey there, folks. Let me tell you about a day that flipped my life on its head. I'm Mark, and this is my story, as real as it gets. It was October 24th, a regular Thursday, or so I thought. I'm a 47-year-old guy, been through life's ups and downs, but nothing prepared me for that day. My wife, Laura, she's 10 years my junior, a firecracker of a woman. We had our good times, you know. But that day, it all changed. I decided to surprise her for lunch. She worked at this fancy design firm, always busy, always running around. Me? I'm more the grab a sandwich from the deli kind of guy. But that day, I had this weird urge, like something was pulling me to go home. I pulled into our driveway, noticing an Audi I'd never seen before. Fancy car for a fancy day, I joked to myself, trying to brush off the unease settling in my gut. As I walked to the front door, through our big bay window, I caught a glimpse of Laura and some guy, sitting too close for comfort on our sofa. The look on her face when she saw me through the glass, man, it was like she saw a ghost. I barged in, the door slamming against the wall, and there they were, Laura and this slick-looking dude, Derek, from her office. Derek, all cool and composed, stood up, flashing a grin that I wanted to wipe off his face. "Hey, Mark. What a surprise, man. Just here for a quick lunch," he said, his voice too smooth, too rehearsed. Laura, with her back straight as a rod, her eyes darting between me and Derek, stammered, "Mark, honey, what are you doing home?" Ignoring her, I turned to Derek, "And what the hell are you doing in my house, Derek?" He held up his hands, a picture of innocence. "Hey, calm down, man. It's nothing. Just lunch. No big deal." I could feel the anger boiling in my veins. Lunch? In my house with my wife? And you call that no big deal? Laura stepped between us, her hands pushing against my chest. "Mark, please, let's talk about this." But I was past talking. I was in my own home, feeling like a stranger. Just then, Mrs. Henderson, our nosy neighbor from next door, barged in, her eyes wide with worry and curiosity. "Is everything okay here?" "I heard shouting," she exclaimed, her gaze flickering over the three of us. Before I could respond, Laura, tears welling up in her eyes, turned to Mrs. Henderson. "Everything's fine, just a little misunderstanding." But Mrs. Henderson wasn't buying it. She had that look, you know, like she knew more than she let on. "Mark, you seem upset. Why don't you step outside and cool off?" I shot a glare at Derek, who was now conveniently interested in the floor. "This isn't over," I muttered, stepping past Mrs. Henderson to the porch, the cool air doing nothing to douse the fire in my chest. I sat on the porch steps, my mind racing. What the hell just happened? I muttered to myself. The perfect suburban picture, our home, our life, it all felt like a sham. After a few minutes, Laura came out, her face a mix of fear and confusion. "Mark, please, let's talk about this. It's not what you think." I looked up at her, the woman I thought I knew. "Not what I think. How many lunches have there been, Laura?" She knelt in front of me, her hand reaching for mine. "Mark, I swear, it's not like that. We're just colleagues. Colleagues don't hang out in each other's houses when their partners aren't home, Laura. They don't look guilty as hell when caught." Our argument was cut short by the sound of sirens. Turning around, I saw a police car pulling up, Mrs. Henderson standing at her door, phone in hand. My heart sank. "You called the cops on me, Laura?" "No, Mark, I didn't, I swear." Laura's voice was frantic, but it was too late. Two officers approached, their expressions stern. "Sir, we need to talk to you. There's been a complaint about a domestic disturbance." I stood up, my hands raised. "Officers, there's no disturbance here. Just a misunderstanding." But as they cuffed me, reading me my rights, I realized that my world, my marriage, my whole damn life was unraveling right there on my front lawn. And all I could do was watch. "Hey again, it's Mark. Now, let me dive into the whirlwind that followed that crazy day, the legal battles, and the aftermath that rocked my world." I got out of the station the next day, feeling like a criminal in my own story. My thoughts were a tornado of anger, betrayal, and confusion. And who's there to pick me up? None other than Rick, my college buddy. Short guy, but with a heart and wallet both oversized. "Man, this is messed up," Rick said as I slumped into his car, the taste of injustice bitter in my mouth. "We gotta fix this." I was still processing it all. "Rick, my life's turned into a freaking soap opera. and I'm the clueless husband. How did it come to this? Rick, always the guy with a plan, patted my shoulder. First things first, let's get you a lawyer. I know a guy, top-notch, eats cases like this for breakfast. True to his word, Rick introduced me to this shark of a lawyer, Mr. Thompson. The guy was a no-nonsense, high-powered attorney with a reputation for tearing apart opponents in court. We met at this plush office downtown, leather chairs and all. Mr. Thompson, I'm not here to play games. My reputation, my marriage, everything's on the line. I laid it out straight. Mr. Thompson leaned forward, his eyes sharp as razors. Mr. Davis, wrongful arrests, infidelity, neighbor disputes, it's a messy cocktail, but we'll clean it up. I've seen worse. I couldn't believe this was my life now. Suing the police department for wrongful arrest? Divorce papers? It was like I was in a bad movie. Mark, you've got a solid case, Mr. Thompson assured me, his confidence somewhat comforting. We hit them hard, get your name cleared. And as for the divorce, well, that's straightforward. But nothing felt straightforward. Everything was upside down. Weeks turned into months. The lawsuit against the police was like a heavyweight boxing match, trading legal blows, motions, and countermotions. Meanwhile, the divorce was a cold war, with Laura and me tiptoeing around landmines of shared memories and broken promises. I remember one particular day in court, facing those officers. Mr. Davis, can you describe the events leading to your arrest? Mr. Thompson's voice boomed in the courtroom. I recounted the tale, feeling like I was reliving a nightmare. The officers squirmed under Mr. Thompson's relentless questioning. And at any point, did my client show aggression towards his wife or any other individual? No, but... The officer stuttered, and I felt a small victory, a tiny crack in the wall of injustice. Divorce proceedings were another battlefield. I sat across from Laura in a sterile room, our lawyers doing the talking. Mrs. Davis is seeking full custody of the children. Her lawyer, a sleek, cold woman, stated matter-of-factly. I felt my blood boil. Over my dead body, I muttered under my breath. My lawyer nudged me, a silent warning to keep cool. Days blended together, a mix of legal strategies, meetings, and endless paperwork. Rick was my anchor through it all, keeping me from losing my mind. Mark, you can't let this break you. You're tougher than this, he'd say, dragging me out for beers, trying to keep my spirits up. But my spirits were about as low as they could get. The thought of losing my kids, my home, my dignity, it was like a weight dragging me down. One evening, after a particularly grueling day in court, Rick and I sat in a dimly lit bar. The world outside moving on, his mind stood still. Mark, when this is over, you're gonna look back and see how strong you are. Trust me, Rick said, clinking his glass against mine. I just nodded, lost in thought. The legal battles raged on, but inside, I felt like I was already defeated. Little did I know, the fight was just getting started. All right, back to my chaotic life saga. I'm Mark, remember? After the legal mess started to unfold, another chapter began, unraveling the deceit. Trust me, it was like jumping from the frying pan into the fire. It was a couple of weeks into the legal brawl when things started to unravel. Rick and I were at this dingy diner, planning our next move. That's when my phone buzzed. An unknown number. Hello? I answered, cautious. Mark? It's Jenna, Laura's colleague. A hesitant voice came through. Jenna, I knew her, a straight shooter in Laura's office. Yeah, Jenna, what's up? She sighed. I think you should know something about Laura and Derek. I gripped the phone tighter, my heart pounding. Go on, I urged, my voice steady but my mind racing. Jenna spilled it all. Turns out, Laura and Derek's lunches were more than just sandwiches and small talk. They'd been seeing each other for months. Jenna had walked in on them once in Derek's office. I thought you should know, she finished, her voice heavy with guilt. I hung up, feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. Rick, seeing my pale face, pressed for details. I told him everything, my words spilling out like venom. That son of a... Rick's fist clenched, mirroring my anger. We have to use this. It's leverage in your divorce. Yeah, I muttered, the taste of betrayal bitter in my mouth. But the deceit didn't stop there. Days later, I was at the office when my phone rang again. It was Mr. Thompson, my lawyer. Mark, you need to see this, he said, cryptically. I rushed to his office, where he handed me a stack of photos. They were surveillance shots of Laura and Derek, cozy in various settings. My heart sank deeper with each photo. Where did you get these? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. A PI we hired. Thought it might be useful, Mr. Thompson replied, his face a mask of professional neutrality. I left his office feeling numb. The woman I had loved, the mother of my children, was a stranger to me now. The next few days were a blur of anger, hurt, and legal strategies. Rick was by my side, a constant in the storm. We met with Mr. Thompson to plan our next move. Use the evidence. Push for a favorable settlement, Mr. Thompson advised, his eyes sharp. I nodded, a plan forming in my head. I want full custody of the kids, I said, determination seeping into my voice. Mr. Thompson raised an eyebrow. It'll be a tough fight, but we'll go for it. The divorce proceedings turned into a war zone. Laura's lawyer tried to paint me as unstable, unfit. But Mr. Thompson was relentless, countering every move with hard evidence and a solid defense. In the midst of this, Laura tried to reach out. Mark, we need to talk. For our family, she texted one night. I stared at the message, a storm of emotions inside me. There's nothing left to talk about, I replied, my fingers heavy on the keys. The days rolled on, filled with court appearances, meetings, and sleepless nights. The more we dug, the more lies we uncovered. Laura's facade crumbled, piece by piece, in the courtroom. Every revelation was a blow, not just to Laura, but to me as well. I struggled to comprehend how much I didn't know about my own life, my own marriage. One evening, sitting alone in my now half-empty house, the weight of it all hit me. The legal battles, the deceit, the broken trust. It was like living in a nightmare. But I couldn't wake up. This was my reality now, and I had to see it through, no matter how painful it got. And believe me, it got worse before it got better. Hey, it's Mark again. Strap in, cause this chapter of my life is like a roller coaster that only goes up in the legal sense but down, way down, personally. Let's dive in. I remember sitting in Mr. Thompson's office, the air thick with tension, waiting for the verdict on the wrongful arrest case. Rick was there, tapping his foot, a nervous habit of his. The phone rang, slicing through the silence like a knife. Mr. Thompson answered, his expression unreadable. Yes. I see. Excellent news, he spoke into the receiver, a hint of a smile cracking his usual stoic facade. He hung up, turning to us with triumphant eyes. Gentlemen, we won. The department's settling. A hefty sum, I might add. I couldn't believe it. It felt surreal. We won. I stammered, my voice barely a whisper. Rick jumped up, punching the air. Hell yes. Justice served, my man. But the victory was bittersweet. Winning the lawsuit was one thing. Dealing with a broken marriage was another. The divorce proceedings were like navigating a minefield blindfolded. I remember one particular meeting with Laura's lawyer, a sleek guy named Donovan. We were in this sterile conference room. The atmosphere is cold as ice. Mr. Davis, let's be reasonable. Joint custody is the best solution here, Donovan proposed, his voice smooth like oil. I leaned forward, my hands clenched. Reasonable? After everything she's done? I want full custody. My kids deserve stability, not a cheating mother. Donovan raised an eyebrow, unfazed. Accusations of infidelity don't automatically disqualify my client from being a good mother. The back and forth was exhausting. Every meeting, every court appearance drained me a little more. But I wasn't about to back down, not when it came to my kids. Then came the day of the final hearing. The courtroom was packed, the air heavy with anticipation. Laura sat across from me, her eyes avoiding mine. The judge, an older woman with a no-nonsense look, presided over the case like a hawk. Mr. Davis, do you have any final statements? The judge asked, peering down at me over her glasses. I stood up, my legs feeling like jelly. Your Honor, all I've ever wanted was to provide a loving, stable home for my children. I believe that's something I can best provide. Laura's lawyer stood up next, painting her as a victim of circumstance, a loving mother caught in a difficult situation. I could barely listen without scoffing. The judge took her time, flipping through her notes, her expression unreadable. Then she looked up, clearing her throat. I've reached a decision. Those moments waiting for her verdict felt longer than the entire divorce process. But when it came, it was like a punch to the gut. Joint custody, she declared, her voice final. I slumped back into my chair, a mix of relief and disappointment washing over me. Joint custody wasn't what I wanted, but at least I wasn't completely cut out of my kids' lives. Walking out of the courtroom, I felt like I was leaving a part of myself behind. Rick clapped a hand on my shoulder, trying to offer some comfort. You did good, Mark. The kids will be all right. But I wasn't so sure. The legal victory was clear, but personally, I was a mess. My family was torn apart, my marriage a shambles, and the future uncertain. That night, I sat alone in my half-empty house, the walls echoing with memories and what-ifs. The legal battles were over, but the real fight, the fight to rebuild my life, was just beginning. And let me tell you, it was going to be the toughest fight of them all. Hey there, it's Mark again. Now, let's dive into the part where my life's jigsaw puzzle started getting its pieces back, albeit in a different picture. This chapter is all about revelations and the tough resolutions I had to make. After the dust of the court battle settled, I was left with the daunting task of rebuilding my life. The house felt empty, too quiet, filled with echoes of a life that used to be. The kids would come every other week, their smiles a bittersweet reminder of the family we once were. One evening, the kids were with Laura, and I was sitting in my living room, the TV playing some show I wasn't watching. My phone buzzed. It was Laura. "Can we talk?" her message read. I stared at it, a whirlpool of emotions churning inside me. I called her. "What is it, Laura?" I asked, my voice steady but my heart racing. "Mark, I wanted to apologize for everything." Her voice cracked, and I could tell she was crying. The apology hit me hard, but it was too little, too late. "Laura, why? Why did you do it?" There was a pause, and when she spoke, her words were like daggers. "I was lost, Mark. Lost and selfish. I regretted every day. I wanted to be angry, to shout and scream, but all I felt was a deep, profound sadness. I wish things were different, Laura, but we can't turn back time." We talked for a while about the kids, about life moving forward. It was a conversation filled with what-ifs and could-have-beens. After the call, I sat there, lost in thought. The revelations from Laura brought some closure, but the wounds were still fresh, still painful. The days rolled on, and I started focusing on myself, on healing. I picked up old hobbies I'd forgotten, started working out, anything to fill the void. Rick was a constant presence, always there to lift my spirits. "Come on, man. Let's get you back in the game," he'd say, dragging me to some local bar or a basketball game. One night, we were at this little dive bar, the kind of place where everyone knows your name. Rick was in his element, joking with the bartender, while I was nursing a beer, lost in thought. "Hey, Mark, you ever thought about dating again?" Rick asked, a mischievous glint in his eye. I almost choked on my beer. "Dating? Rick, I'm not sure I'm ready for that." He shrugged. "Doesn't have to be serious. Just some company. You know? Life's too short to dwell on the past." His words struck a chord. Maybe he was right. Maybe it was time to start a new chapter. The following weeks were a blur of introspection and small steps forward. I went on a few dates, nothing serious, just coffee or a walk in the park. It felt strange, like learning to walk again. During this time, I also started seeing a therapist, Dr. Harris. She was this kind, understanding woman who helped me navigate the stormy waters of my emotions. "Mark, healing is a journey, not a destination," she'd say, her voice calm and soothing. "You're allowed to grieve, to feel angry, but you also need to forgive, not for others, but for yourself." Her words were like a beacon in the fog. Slowly, I started to let go of the anger, the bitterness. It wasn't easy, but I could feel myself getting stronger, more at peace with the past. Life was slowly piecing itself back together. The kids were adjusting well, happy to have two homes where they were loved. Laura and I had settled into a cordial relationship, focused on co-parenting. I remember one evening, the kids were over, and we were having dinner, laughing and joking. It was a moment of pure, simple joy, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there's light. Sitting there, with my kids' laughter ringing in my ears, I realized something important. Life goes on, and so must I. The revelations and resolutions, the pain and the healing, it was all part of my journey. And as I watched my kids play in the backyard, the setting sun painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, I knew that no matter what, we'd be okay. We were a family, broken maybe, but still strong. And that was something worth fighting for, every single day. Hey, it's Mark here again. Now, let me take you through the chapter where I start piecing my life back together. It's about moving forward, with all its twists and turns. Life after the storm of divorce and legal battles was like sailing in uncharted waters. I was learning to navigate my new normal. The house, once a symbol of marital bliss, was now my personal space, a sanctuary of sorts. I remember one Saturday morning, I was in the backyard, fixing up the old swing set for the kids. The sun was shining bright, a gentle breeze blowing. It felt like a fresh start. "Hey, Dad." My son, Alex, called out as he and his sister, Emma, ran towards me, their laughter filling the air. "Hey, kiddos. Ready to give this old swing a try? I asked, my heart swelling with love for these two rays of sunshine in my life. They squealed with delight, taking turns on the swing as I pushed them higher and higher. To the moon, Daddy. Emma giggled, her hair flying in the wind. In moments like these, I found my peace, my purpose. They were my anchor, keeping me grounded. But life wasn't just about being a dad. There was more I had to rediscover about myself. I started hitting the gym more often, channeling my frustrations into weights and cardio. It was on one of these gym days that I met Sarah. She was there, headphones on, completely absorbed in her workout. I couldn't help but notice her. There was something about her focus that captivated me. One day, I mustered the courage to strike up a conversation. "Hey, I've seen you here a few times. Any tips for a guy trying to get back in shape?" I asked, trying not to sound awkward. She smiled, pulling out her earbuds. "Sure, consistency is key. And maybe less time staring, more time lifting," she teased. We hit it off, and soon we were gym buddies. Sarah was great. She was funny, smart, and had been through her share of life's ups and downs. My journey of self-improvement wasn't just physical. I enrolled in a cooking class, something I always wanted to do but never got around to. It was during these classes, amidst the aroma of spices and the clatter of pots and pans, that I found a new passion. Cooking became therapeutic, a way to express creativity and unwind. As weeks turned into months, life settled into a rhythm. The kids were adjusting well, happy in their new routine. Laura and I maintained a cordial relationship, keeping our interactions focused on the kids' well-being. One evening, while the kids were with Laura, I found myself at the local bookstore. I was browsing through the aisles when a book on travel caught my eye. Travel, something I'd always loved but hadn't done in years. I purchased the book, flipping through the pages when I got home, each destination sparking a sense of adventure in me. Maybe it's time for a trip, I thought to myself. The idea stuck with me, and soon I was planning a solo trip to Europe, a few weeks of exploration, just me and the open road. It felt exciting, liberating even. The night before my trip, Rick came over, a bottle of wine in hand. "To new beginnings," he toasted, a proud smile on his face. "Thanks, man. Couldn't have done it without you," I replied, feeling grateful for his unwavering support. The trip was everything I hoped for and more. I hiked through scenic trails, explored ancient cities, and met fascinating people. It was a journey of self-discovery, of reconnecting with the world and myself. Returning home, I felt rejuvenated, ready to embrace whatever life had in store. I continued my newfound hobbies, spent quality time with my kids, and even went on a few more dates with Sarah. Life was moving forward, not without its challenges, but with a renewed sense of hope and purpose. I realized that change, though scary, can be the doorway to new beginnings. As I sit here, sharing my story, I look back at the turbulent journey I've been through. It's been a ride of highs and lows, of losses and gains. But through it all, I've grown, learned, and found strength I never knew I had. And as for the future? Well, it's unwritten, a blank page waiting to be filled with new stories, new adventures. I'm ready for it, with all its uncertainties and possibilities. Because that's life, unpredictable, challenging, but always moving forward.